All right, brother, I'm in need of a job.
There's a file for you, brother. A quick, smooth job like the last one is what we need. The target's over in the Actor Industrial Park. Make this quiet.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Grand Theft Auto 4. Got some good shit for you today. We're doing all of the fixer/assassination missions. Just gonna go rapid fire. I believe there's like 10 of them. I don't know, I guess we'll see. We did one in the last video, so I guess I'll see how many there are in this one. I just kind of went for it and wasn't really paying much attention to any of them. But yeah, it's a pretty easy way to get some extra cash. Not that you really need it in this game. They give you a pretty decent amount of it anyway. And they also are, while a little bit, ludo-narratively dissonant, let's say, in a few ways. I guess not entirely, but you know what I mean. They're just kind of there for the sake of it. They don't really have anything to do with anything. But they are some of my favorite missions in the game just because of how straightforward they are and because of the open-endedness of them, where you really can, you know, dispose of these people in basically whatever manner you deem fit. I mean, obviously there are some ways that don't really work, but yeah, other than that, I was gonna just run into them. I usually like to run over people when they're in those big crowds like that, but it didn't seem too bad. Usually I fuck that one up because that one of them, or a couple of them, get on bikes and run away if you don't shoot them, but I think I got all of them. And yeah, the UL paper people are telling us about John. His name is John Gravelli, but he's the leader of the Gambetti crime family, so I don't really, like, understand that very much. Like, why his last name is Gravelli, but the crime family that he's in charge of is Gambetti? I don't know.
All right, man. You got any work for me?
There's a file for you, brother. A quick, smooth job like the last one is what we need.
He's gonna say that at the beginning of every mission, by the way. There's a file for your brother. A quick, smooth job like the last one is what we need. Even if you, like, do a completely sloppy-ass job, which you pretty much can. Like I said, you almost never have to worry about losing your wanted level with these missions. But even if you're pretty reckless with it, he'll be like, oh, yeah, you really kept it under, you know, kept it hush-hush with that last one. Even if you know, just went out there guns blazing. I think there's at least one of these where I kill them with a rocket launcher. That's the easiest way to do it. By the way, I'm very excited to be having the rocket launcher. I forgot how late in the game you get it, which is understandable. But it's so weird that, like, it's such a... It's not the best weapon to use in a lot of situations because it can make your wanted level go up very quickly, because it's, you know, booms. But, you know, on multiplayer and when I'm fucking around in this game with cheats and just doing whatever I want, you know, it's one of your more frequently used weapons because of its, you know, destructive capacity. Because blowing stuff up in video games is fun. It's one of the best parts. Anyway, best thing to use here, obviously, is a sniper rifle. I'm sure you could blow up the boat as well. And yeah, the cops, there's a cop right there, and they just do not give a fuck about any of this shit you're doing. I guess these are all, like I said, the fixer seems to have some sort of relationship with the police where he can stop your wanted level from going up, so I'm certain that these are people that, like, you know, acceptable targets for murder as far as, like, law enforcement is concerned. But, you know, you just are the one doing it in the dirty way that they can't. And someone took a big old munch out of the front of my car. It's a nice car that I've completely fucked up in doing these missions. I think I got all scrunched up on the way back and not during one of the actual missions. Also, yeah, gotta love how the Italians keep hounding Nico for, like, tribute from some of his pay, because that's what the Italians do. And Nico's like, yeah, nah, fuck that. I think I'm gonna keep it. That's the Serbian way.
Hey, you got any work for me?
There's a file for you, brother. A quick, smooth job like the last one is what we need. You need to eliminate 3 targets at the refinery in the Actor Industrial Park.
It's taking a sip break. Sip, sip. So today, because we have a pretty long video here, as you can tell, at least longer than usual, and because none of these, I don't really think anything about my, like, performance of these missions warrants a whole lot of what am I saying? Content? Context? Whatever. Description, or whatever, commentary? I don't know. I don't know words. They don't have anything to do with the story. I don't think there's a whole lot interesting that goes on. If I notice something, then I'll say something, but if you see something, say something. But I wanted to talk in detail about a man that I have already mentioned at least a couple of times during this LP, and probably many times before that, that a lot of you, if you have been paying attention to mainstream video game controversies for like 10 plus years, like I have, specifically the age-old debate over whether or not violent video games cause real-world violence, which is, I will say, a very interesting, conversation to have, because on the one hand, of course, I am of a mind that no, media in general does not, create actions where there otherwise wouldn't be, like just out of the ether. There has to be, the fact that we live in as violent a society as we do, even though overall violent crimes, at least in America, have been going down since the early 90s, which is, when like console gaming was really like firmly a thing and whatnot, and 1992 was when Mortal Kombat came out, which is where this I'm sure it's not where this controversy began, but it's where it got really heated. It was the first time it was put before Congress. And 1993 was actually the year that, like, violent crime in America started going on its current downward trend. What is more common now than in the past is very large displays of mass violence that statistically aren't very likely, but are very high profile and more frequent than in past times. But obviously, I don't think we can blame any one medium or any one media product for that. I think you may have an argument that, like, violent culture in America in general is part of it, but there are material conditions, there are material reasons, and not just cultural reasons for why we have those huge displays of violence, and we can talk about those at another time. Like I said, it is a complicated debate. I don't think it is just so simple as, no, like, video games are completely harmless and whatnot, because the thing is, while video games are just media, they do have that one element of them that sets them apart from other media, which is that they're interactive. You are doing something. And that does change the way that your brain interacts with it a little bit, and the way that your brain processes and responds to the information and the stimuli in the game. So it is an interesting conversation, but I do think it's more complicated than just video games, even if you were to make a compelling argument that video games are, like, particularly bad for your brain or whatever. But nobody has taken that assumption of video games causing real-world violence and ran with it more than former Florida-based attorney Jack Thompson, who many of you, like I said, if you've been following video game controversies for a while, you are probably familiar with him. I know I've brought him up during this LP before. I mentioned that he was specifically one of the main progenitors of a lot of the controversy surrounding this game, which I'll probably get more into the other controversies around this game coming out, which there were multiple. Just like with 5, just like with San Andreas. I mean, the GTA franchise is pretty notorious for being very controversial with, parents groups and all that sort of thing. That guy, did you see that dude? That cop that dude just ate shit. He flew out of there. That was crazy. I didn't even notice that when I was playing. Anyway, speeding this up, you don't have to watch me get away from the cops. It took a lot longer than it needed to, and I already knew this video was going to be a long one. Anyway, so yeah, I'll get to those in another video. I've already mentioned the one about MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, but, so I want to talk about Jack Thompson. I'm not going to give you his whole biography because he has a long and prolific career of being a fucking nerd. But basically all you need to know is he is a born-again evangelical Christian lawyer who I've actually bought and read his memoir, which is called Out of Harm's Way, where he delves into, his backstory and his sort of reason for pursuing the career that he had. He believes himself to be on a literal mission from God to save children from, violent and sexual and improper media. He first came to prominence by getting into a feud with a local shock jock radio host in Florida and persuaded the FCC to fine the radio station a few $1,000s and a bunch of other shit. Like most of his, attempts at litigation, they didn't really end in much of anything. He also had a run-in with Janet Reno, who at the time was the assistant state's attorney, or was trying to be the assistant state's attorney in Miami-Dade County, and would, later go on to be Bill Clinton's attorney general. And they had an interaction where Thompson basically gave her a letter at a campaign event with a checkbox of whether she was gay, bi, or straight, and she put her hand on his shoulder and said, "I'm only interested in virile men, that's why I'm not attracted to you," and he filed a police report against her, accusing her of battery for touching him. That should give you a little bit of an idea of the kind of person he is. Like, he's a really, pathetic nerd in a lot of ways. And these are all just things that I've, committed to memory over the years of reading about him and learning about him. Then he got more national attention for going after rap music, specifically 2 Live Crew, Ice-T, and NWA, and specifically in Florida. And basically, he kept making the argument that the sale of the albums, because the albums could be sold to minors, they violated state obscenity laws. And when he was sending documents to his opponents in these litigations, he would attach a photocopy of his driver's license with Batman pasted over his face in the picture. And I have a quote here of why he says, "I have sent my opponents pictures of Batman to remind them that I am playing the role of Batman. Just like Bruce Wayne helped the police in the movie, I have had to assist the sheriff of Broward County." He also apparently wore a Batman wristwatch. I forgot about that part. But yeah, so yeah, big old nerd, big old Dumbo, big fucking, snitch and fun hater. He's kind of like the Anthony Comstock of the 90s and 2000s. What Anthony Comstock was to penny novels, Jack Thompson is to rap music and video games. I'm really surprised that he wasn't one of those people who was going after, like, Harry Potter for being satanic and Dungeons and Dragons for being satanic and whatnot. But anyway, but by far the most prominent part of Jack Thompson's crusade for morality has been against video games and the Grand Theft Auto series and Rockstar games specifically. He has had several run-ins with the proprietors of Take-Two Interactive, the parent company of Rockstar. Not just with GTA, but also with the game Bully and with both of the Manhunt games, which, not in his defense or anything, but the Manhunt games are pretty, like, explicitly and purposefully, like, very shockingly violent. Excuse me. But, so anyway, so he had already had a few legal run-ins with Take-Two Interactive. Specifically, his most recent one at the time of this game, being about to be released, was his actions against Bully, which I don't remember all the details, but the one thing I do remember is that it was one of the few things of his to actually, like, go to court, and they literally brought in a copy of the game, which it really is funny to me to imagine this, but they had the judge play the game on a PS2 in, like, the robing room of the court. And he played it for a few hours, and Jack Thompson and the lawyers for Take-Two just sat there and watched him. Jack Thompson was no doubt fuming, and in his book, I think he even talks about he was, like, pointing out all the things you can do, how you can, like, beat kids up and, like, hit them with slingshots, and you can ogle girls, which, yes, that all is very much accurate. Those are things you can do in the video game Bully. And the judge was like, yeah, I mean, it's a video game. Like, it's for having fun, and, like, he also said something about, like, the narrative. Like, there's narrative context to what you're doing. It's not necessarily condoning it just because it puts you in the position of doing it, which is a very interesting sort of, like, philosophical / psychological conversation to have about video games, is, whether or not there is some condoning because it is putting you in the position of thing, or how putting you in the active position of carrying out the immoral actions of a character in a piece of media, changes the context of those actions. But Jack Thompson is not really interested in a formal analysis of video games. He very, very, very often refers to them as murder simulators. He went so far as to say that when Sony came out with the Rumble feature for the DualShock controller for the PS2, he called it mental masturbation, and was like, now every time you kill someone, you get a jolt of a pleasurable buzz with every kill. And yeah, so. But all that was leading up to, in 2007, Grand Theft Auto 4 has just been announced, and Take-Two filed a lawsuit to prevent Thompson from filing any public nuisance lawsuit against the company, which he did with several other games, including Bully, that were meant to block the sale of the game to minors. They had Manhunt 2 coming out that year, and then they had GTA 4 coming out in the spring of the next year. And Thompson took this as a bit of a challenge. The lawsuit was alleging that Thompson violated the company's First Amendment rights by, trying to stop the sale of the games. And so let me just read you this this paragraph from his Wikipedia page. On April 19, 2007, Thompson and Take-Two settled the lawsuit, with Thompson agreeing not to seek any legal restriction on sales of Take-Two's games, threatened to sue the company, or accuse Take-Two of any wrongdoing based on the sale of any of its games. One analyst said that the settlement was likely to mute his public pronouncements and lawsuits against the company. However, upon the game's release in 2008, Thompson called Grand Theft Auto 4, quote, the gravest assault upon children in this country since polio, and asked Minnesota Governor Tim Pawlenty, why Minnesota, I am not really sure, to pursue and file criminal charges against, that's why, Minnesota-based retailers Target and Best Buy, the only places who sell video games. He also sent a letter to Take-Two chairman Strauss Zelnick's attorney that was addressed to Zelnick's mother, in which Thompson accused her son of doing everything he possibly can to sell as many copies of GTA 4 to teen boys in the United States, a country in which your son claims you raised him to be a Boy Scout. More like the Hitler Youth, I would say. On May 1st, 2008, 2 days after the game came out, Thompson appeared on the CNN headline news program Glenn Beck, asserting that the game's sexual content made its sale to minors illegal, and that he was working with law enforcement to have criminal prosecutions brought. Thompson also filed a complaint with the Chicago Transit Authority about poster ads for the game at Chicago bus stops. Okay, so that last part wasn't really pertinent information. What that paragraph does not get into is the fact that that little interaction with Strauss Zelnick's lawyer/mother and various other, litigations where he intimidated or insulted the people he was going against privately, which he did incredibly frequently and bragged about and defended vociferously in his book. He was disbarred by the Florida Bar Association in 2008, right after this game came out. So, that hasn't stopped him from being, a public commentator on things. I haven't really heard too much from him. The last time I heard of him saying anything was when GTA 5 came out, which, it's a GTA game, so I'm sure when GTA 6 comes out, Jack will come out of the woodwork and, do some shit. It won't do anything, I'll just say it. So the GTA 5 came out right before the mass shooting at the Washington Navy Yard, and I guess he was trying to blame it on that, basically. And then there was a Game Zone article that was basically just disagreeing with Thompson that video games cause violence. And he was saying his oft-repeated claim, which is not accurate, that the American Psychological Association has established a causal link between these games and increased aggression. The Department of Defense uses them for that purpose. And this is something that he said on that Glenn Beck program, and that he says a lot, and that a lot of people who agree with Jack Thompson about violent video games parrot very often, including that Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman guy that I was talking about a few videos ago. Which is, one, that thing about the APA, what the American Psychological Association, and they have saying that they've established a causal link between playing violent video games and increased aggression. Now, that is true as far as I am aware, that they did a study, or a few studies, where, playing something violent made young people feel more aggressive. But aggression was, has not been very well defined in a lot of these supposedly seminal studies, and also, from a legal perspective, the problem is, for one thing, these companies do have a First Amendment right to publish what they want. It's a pretty strong right in the U.S., at least when it comes to like corporate entertainment. And secondly, with regard to GTA 4 specifically, they are not marketed to children, and whether they are sold to children doesn't violate any law. It violates some state obscenity laws, but if it's like Target or Best Buy, like, you're not going to catch a multinational corporation legally responsible for, for instance, the murder of people in a school shooting because the person who did it owned a video game that they sell. That's just the way that the legal system works in America is just not going to work like that. And honestly, I would really question the sort of moral argument for that being a thing worth doing. But yeah, that was the last that I really heard of Jack Thompson. He hasn't really said anything else since that GTA 5 outburst. The Glenn Beck spot that he's on is very funny. I would talk about it more, but I would more want to do a video where I, like, am just talking about it. I don't know if I would put it on my main channel, because, like, what's the point in doing a breakdown of, like, a 12-year-old news spot? For an argument that really isn't made in our culture all that much anymore. I mean, I know that there are people who still believe that. And, you know, like I said, Dave Grossman seems to believe that, you know, video game companies, and Jack Thompson believes this too, not only, like, it would be one thing if just, like, you know, children steeped in violent media and violent culture might, you know, become more violent. I would really, like, be able to buy that. But their thing is that it is a deliberate attempt on the part of the video game companies to train children to kill. Like, the video games are made with the purpose to make children know how to and feel okay about killing people. And I just very much don't believe this. And Dave Grossman and Jack Thompson both parrot this, and Dave Grossman appeals to his own authority because he's a lieutenant colonel, even though he's never seen any battle. But because he developed, I don't know if he developed them, but as part of his trainings of the military, to kill more efficiently and with less remorse, they did use, like, simulator video games. But those are, like, military simulators where the reason they exist is to, and it's more about, like, tactics. It's not so much the morals of it. I mean, the rest of military training, you know, that's what the rest of military training is for, basically, is, you know, getting the remorse out of your head and the apprehension out of you. You know, the simulators are just, you know, for simulating situations. And if GTA 4 is a simulator, it's not a very good one. It's not a very accurate one, for, you know, the physical act of killing or for the consequences of it. And it also has a story. Again, it has context. There is artistry around it. There's context to the violence. Not that that's context that the average small child would probably understand, but one, you know, that's kind of up to the child and whoever's raising them to become emotionally mature enough to be able to see things on screen and know you're not supposed to do them. You know, that's just a normal-ass brain development, but I guess because Jack Thompson and his ilk of Christian conservatives doesn't believe in public education, they probably think that all people are just, you know, completely fucking brain dead and can't tell fiction from reality in any way. I have no idea. And then on the other hand, like, if this is true, then they're not doing a very good job, because, again, violent crime is down, and, like, while some young people are going out and shooting people, it's not like they're doing it with military-grade precision or anything. They're just murdering people like any other people murder people, basically. You know, in a sort of mass murder event. And I don't know. It's a very dumb thing to me. It seems like, I don't know. I don't really know what Jack Thompson's real motivation is. Like, I know what he says his motivation is, and I do get that, like, he sees himself as, like, an arbiter of morality, but, like, I don't know. He's been saying the same shit about the American Psychological Association and video games for, like, 25 years, and it's like, I don't know. You would think that maybe that an issue as complicated as these sorts of incidents of mass violence by young people would have a more nuanced answer than just the video game companies are making them kill people. I don't know. Like, my other question is, what do video game companies stand to gain from doing that? Why would video game companies make stuff that they know and hope will make kids kill people? who are, potentially other customers of them. I know that's very cynical, but that is how a company would look at that problem. It's just a question of motivation. And that's like another thing that Jack Thompson is pretty well known for, is when he wrote this thing called A Modest Video Game Proposal, where he challenged video game companies to make a game where the object is to go and murder a bunch of game developers at E3, because, the implication being they're never going to take this up, because then everyone would get inspired by the video game and then come kill them, and they don't want to get killed, they just want to see other people get killed. And of course no video game company fucking made it, because it's a stupid ass, why would we do this for you? And then other people did make it, independent people did make it, and people played it, and Jack Thompson knows people played it, and I believe Jack Thompson himself is the final boss of the game, although I'm not sure. I know that there have been many games and hacks and mods where people allow you to kill Jack Thompson, because as you could imagine, he is a not very well-liked figure in the gaming world. I don't really know how much gamers really talk about him anymore. Gamers today are more worried about the girls in the games not having big enough boobs. So I don't know if they really care about Jack Thompson or even know about Jack Thompson anymore. But in the 2000s, on the internet, you could see him being mocked in various ways on the internet, on gaming forums, whenever he had his latest outburst. Because it used to be a couple times a year you'd hear about Jack Thompson would be going on Fox News or something and saying, this is the latest thing that's going to murder all of your children, and requesting to be the representative of kids who killed people and say that, actually, they're innocent because they were made to kill by fucking Sony and Take-Two Interactive, and obviously every court that he tried that in would be well, no. But yeah, that's a little bit of history of Jack Thompson. But yeah, the whole conflating regular video games with murder simulators that are actually made to be simulations for the military is a tale as old as time, and it's really funny coming from Dave Grossman particularly too, because his job is to make the military and police be more ruthless and efficient killers, and he's actually quite good at it, or at least by his own metrics. And so he's these video games are terrible, they turn you into a killer. I know, because very different games that play very differently that I used to train troops and cops to kill people, they work really well. I mean, look how much they're killing people. I don't know. I think mainly when it comes to people like that, like Dave Grossman or Glenn Beck, more media figures than someone like Jack Thompson, who's an activist lawyer, I think it's really just, fear-mongering for conservative parents. It's just, your kids... There is a general, sense, and it's not a new one, but it's more palpable as time goes on in American society that, your children are being corrupted, your children are, being exposed to harmful media. You aren't, of course. The media... the media that you are watching and listening to right now that seeks to impart a worldview on you, that is having no effect on you. But your kids are being brainwashed by these video games. I don't know. I think I've run out of interesting things to say about that for now. But I hope it was interesting to hear about. I know I talked over quite a bit, but this Phil Bell mission doesn't really mean shit. At least not that I'm aware of. Yeah, but that was a little bit of history of Jack Thompson. He really hates the GTA games. I'm trying to think of what those other controversies were with Grand Theft Auto 4. Let me see something. It has its own Wikipedia page, controversies surrounding Grand Theft Auto 4. That's pretty amazing. it mentions the Glenn Beck thing. It talks about Dave Grossman, Parents Television Council guy. There were a couple crimes in New York, and then another one in Thailand where there were kids who did something, and they said that they were inspired by the game. And see, that's the kind of thing that, makes the rounds with these, conservative scaremongering of, these games are making people violent. And it's like, well, I for one would like the greater context of these kids who say that they were inspired by GTA 4. Like, why? Why are video games dictating what they do in real life? And, maybe there's some sort of justification, or not justification, what am I saying? Some sort of explanation for why, or GTA 4 is just their justification for doing something they want to do anyway, or were predisposed to doing anyway. And, in saying this, I'm not trying to absolve, video games and entertainment in general of all, culpability in social problems, because I just said they can affect, how people see the world and whatnot. But, to lay sole blame on them, on pop culture, and without any regard for people's material conditions and how that may affect their decision-making and their view of the world. Why pieces of pop culture that are this way are appealing to them in the way that they are, about why they can, most people can play a game like GTA and go, haha, fun. But there are some kids who go like, oh, I want to fucking murder people. Murdering sounds fucking amazing. Like, the game didn't give them that part of their brain that makes them say that to themselves. The game triggered it, sure, you could make that argument. But why was that there? Why was that spark already there? What was going on that set the ground for that? So this is some food for thought. Anyway, hope you enjoyed me rambling about that bullshit. Next time we'll be doing just more Mafia stuff, And I'll see you then for that.